Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our session, Research and Technology Infrastructures as Catalysts for European Startups and Scale-ups. I think it's a very nice continuation to the plenary session, speaking about what are the hurdles still facing European companies to start and to scale up in Europe. My name is Signe Ratso. I'm Deputy Director General in DG Research and Innovation, and I have the great pleasure to moderate this session today. Just a bit of introduction. As you know, Europe's competitiveness increasingly depends on our ability to turn frontier science and technology into successful market applications. Research and technology infrastructures are central to this transformation. They enable cutting-edge scientific discoveries, deep tech innovation, support startups, and reinforce Europe's technological sovereignty. Yet, startups often struggle to access these facilities due to complexity, fragmentation, and uneven distribution. Today's discussion in this session will explore how EU policies, strategies and actions can bridge this gap, making infrastructures more accessible and effective for Europe's innovators. You may have noticed that yesterday the College of Commissioners adopted the European Strategy for Research and Technology Infrastructures. I suspect that our panelists have already had a glimpse, if not already being able to really reflect on the strategy, but they may give also later today in this discussion their first reactions to that. What you see in this strategy is an ecosystem approach, which encompasses both research and technology infrastructures. And while that, we will be able to deliver stronger investment, greater accessibility, and greater coordination to our world-class infrastructures in Europe. This agenda very well complements the EU Startup and Scale-up strategy and also the forthcoming European Innovation Act. Together, these actions aim to make Europe the best place to start and scale a company. Let me now introduce our panelists today. We are very fortunate to have three outstanding voices with us today. Our first panelist is Plamena Markova, who's Chief of International Relations at EMBL, European Molecular Laboratory. Plamena, therefore, represents one of Europe's most renowned and historic research infrastructures, bringing deep experience in turning science and research data into socio-economic impact. Our second panelist is Massimo Caccia, CEO and co-founder of Random Power, an experimental scientist turned entrepreneur. He has transformed research into a deep tech company, showing how infrastructures can be a springboard for innovation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Our third panelist is Dr. Jesus Valero, Managing Director of Tecnalia and at the same time also President of EARTA. Jesus represents both one of Europe's largest applied research and technology centers and also the wider community of operators, shaping the future of technology infrastructures across the continent. Welcome. Welcome to all.
Thank you.
Now, with this distinguished panel, whom I've introduced, we will explore how policymakers and the infrastructures themselves can build a stronger, more connected European innovation ecosystem for our startups and scale-ups to thrive. Let me start with you, Plamena. Then I will turn to the other panelists. Flamenna, you represent one of Europe's premier research infrastructures, typically associated more with the blue sky research. Yet now, research infrastructures are increasingly recognized also for their contribution to innovation and to Europe's competitiveness at large. In your view, how can Europe best support the capacity of research infrastructures to turn scientific discoveries into successful startups?
So first of all, thank you for inviting me. And it's a very momentous time, of course, for Europe, for European research infrastructures, for technology infrastructures, for all scientific actors. I'm a fast reader, and still I need some time to digest the new strategy. But I can say that it's wonderful to see the introduction of this holistic approach to the entire European scientific ecosystem and technology ecosystem. And I say this because organizations such as EMBL really blur the lines between research infrastructures and technology infrastructures. Most of these mature organizations that are part of higher reform, like CERN ourselves, we all do. We perhaps are perceived as infrastructures that were created with a mandate to deliver research, but the truth is that from the very beginning, from our inception, and we're 50 years old, we did have a mandate to deliver services, both experimental and data services, to enable technology transfer to society, and of course to train the next generation of scientists, but also of entrepreneurs. And I would argue that we have a very strong legacy in this. So this is where I feel the lines are blurring, which is not a bad thing, but one has to acknowledge that these infrastructures have a very complex and are operating a very complex ecosystem. We, of course, what we notice is that bold research drives true innovation. Right? And what enables this, because innovation doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in an ecosystem that allows this in all possible ways. And for us, whenever we have seen true innovation bringing competitiveness, bringing new ideas, new talent, new products, it's always been when the research feeds the technology idea, feeds the service, the new type of service, which then enables new research, new technologies, new service, new ideas, all of this being underpinned by the talent that feeds us. So in a way, what for us is important is that it's very well understood by policymakers, by the community, the scientific one, but also the future innovators, the current innovators, that these research infrastructures that we represent already serve a very broad portfolio, both of startups, spin-offs, and large companies that come to us in order to co-innovate together with us or to use our services. So we have close to 30 spin-offs that have come out of EMBL. So I think this is also very important to understand that these organizations are incubators for spin-offs, for innovation. And this is the one thing that I think, because you asked me how can Europe help, by in fact supporting research infrastructures to continue being in a position to be these incubators for spin-offs, so to offer something that is absolutely needed. And what we hear from these companies who come very often out of research that happens at EMBO is that they need more than just benches, more than just lab space. They need mentorship, they need true chaperoning, especially in the early days, a lot of attention, and this of course is very much true for biotech and drug development, where the process, the early days process takes longer. But they also need, of course, access to services, access to infrastructure. So supporting this, supporting the ability of research infrastructures to continue being this incubators for technology is something very important that needs to, I think, continue. The other thing that is very important, I mean, now we talk about AI all the time. We all recognize the importance of AI. But one, of course, has to connect the AI to the data, right? So support for these open data, for data infrastructure is also something critical, because we know that all these companies, big and small, they all need access to this data and it's the research infrastructures that provide this type of access. And this is something that, of course, we welcome in the new strategy, because data resilience is one of the points that is addressed there. I can continue, of course, on many fronts. The wish list is very long, but I think the other point that we all realize as we evolve and we want to serve the needs of our diverse users from academia and industry is the upskilling, right? We need more people who can bridge these, to walk the two routes, so to say, the two roads, both understanding science and innovation and being able to help this process. So this upskilling will be very important going forward, and this is, again, something that I think the strategy addresses, but we really need to implement this, right? We recognize it, but how we implement it is something for us to see in the future. And perhaps, last but not least, it's very important that going forward, it's wonderful to have strategies, it's wonderful to recognize different categories, but what would be tremendously detrimental to European competitiveness is to create boxes and silos that don't connect and to some extent lead to further fragmentation, both of the policy landscape, but also the funding landscape. Because the worst would be that we end up in a situation where research infrastructures compete with technology infrastructures for funding, for users, or even for policy attention. So this is certainly something that we as a community would not want to see. And moreover, given that our experience is that research to innovation, to new technologies, and then to new communities is just a continuum, and research infrastructures offer this continuum.
Well, many thanks, Flormena, for underlying very important issues. Well, starting from from where you concluded one of the underlying reasons why we brought research and technology infrastructures together in one strategy is namely in order to overcome this kind of silo mentality that you mentioned. What we realized as a result of our also consultation was that the users do not care how you call the infrastructure. They really care for the access to the services. And you also demonstrated how EMBL has actually provided services not just for researchers, but also to entrepreneurs, the successful spin-offs that you spoke about, and also the data issue, which is very key. Now, Massimo, you started your career as a scientist and have worked in top research infrastructures. And then you founded your own startup. How can an EU policy for research and technology infrastructures encourage similar success stories like yours?
So let me start by thanking you for inviting me and for sharing my life, essentially. Let me say, so it's not going to take too long. So first, I'm still somehow a researcher, because 80% of me is on the company that spinned out what I did. 20% is still the chair as a full professor that I'm still playing. So I'm lucky. This is possibly one of the reasons why I'm here, and I'm lucky because I grew up into an amazing environment like CERN. So possibly all of you in the room know what CERN is. It's the house of the super gigantic merry-go-round that led to the discovery of the Higgs boson and much beyond. Now, CERN, like most of the research infrastructure, is a place where a young researcher wants to be. And no matter what he's going to do and who he's going to be for the rest of his life, he will never forget the experience. So now the question for me, and again, is a little bit of a criticism into the paper that I received yesterday, is that the European Commission says, okay, you have to make easier access to infrastructure. So there's a strong focus on access. I think you can do a lot more. So I do believe that by now you can move swiftly, well, say gently, from being research infrastructure hubs of knowledge to being cradle of innovation, which is much more than accessing the infrastructure. It's really offering the possibility they had to a much larger, say, party. And this is, again, another small criticism, but it's because of me. That is to say, there's an enormous emphasis on, say, growing up unicorns. No way. Unicorns, by definition, I have a probabilistic mind, are, say, 5 standard deviations. That is to say, 1 in a million, maybe. But you are much more concerned into the others. So you have to really grow up, really an innovation ecosystem, not looking only at the unicorn, but at the rest. So which are the measures? The measures, for me, must be tailored somehow to the different shades of gray that you have in the innovation. So first, you have to consider that at a very early stage, you have to make researchers and young PhD students aware of the opportunity that the knowledge that is springing off blue sky research also has a value beyond blue sky research. And raising awareness is important. For me, it happened when after 10 years at CERN, I moved back to Italy. I got a position, then I got a chair and said, what do I do with it? I have no funding. And then 25 years back, I started looking at the framework programs. By now, in my scoreboard, you have 6 projects approved that were funding 25 years of research. Maybe I'm good, maybe I'm lucky, maybe I grew up in the right way. So you see, it's a smooth transition, and this has been made available. So create awareness of the value that you have into the know-how, the methods, and the technology that comes by blue sky research. Then consider something that grows up your idea inside the RI. Consider something where the zero-order idea that you have has to be proven whether it has a market value. Consider something like a seed investment. Me, I'm one of the beneficiaries of Attract. I think Attract is a great example. It's a cascade funding project. It starts up with, say, limited amount of time just to prove, actually, whether what you have in mind makes sense. Just give you numbers. I'm a physicist. 1,200 proposals submitted, 170 that were retained for phase 1. At the end of phase 1, your ideas maybe are still fuzzy, but they start to become a little bit more clear. And then comes step 2, as you said, incubation. Incubation, as phase 2 of Attract, 18 out of 170 move to step 2. That doesn't mean necessarily, this is another key point, that all of the 18 will be springing off spin-off company. One should take into account the fact that there are different ways of evaluating and giving a value to your ideas. Namely, co-development with establishing company, licensing of the IP, and then even contract research staying at the universities. This is what I did for 25 years before I spin it off. Now, for me, what matters most is the fact that you should also, the European Commission, us, Europe, should also be convincing the legislators that who is dedicating his scientific mind to innovation, even when he stays in research, should be evaluated as such. In the ranking, whenever you want to go for an habilitation, whether you're a full-time scientist or you do something related to innovation, you're not that at the same time. And there are a number of things, but I promised I would have been short.
Well, many thanks, Massimo, for sharing with us your unique experience as a researcher, but also as an innovator, because now you've really have an experience also of applying and being successful, as you said, in the research funding, but also experience on the innovation side. And as you rightly mentioned, we really need to look at the whole innovation journey. when we would like to take advantage of the excellent research results and bring them in the end to the market in order to increase the competitiveness of our companies and our economy as a whole. Now, I'd like to turn to you, Jesus. You are heading an organization representing most European technology infrastructure operators. Technology infrastructures are relative newcomers in the EU policymaking, yet they are critical to be able to test and validate the technologies. In your view, what measures should the EU take to make technology infrastructures more accessible and also more effective for startup and scale-up users?
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me to participate as EARTO president in this event. I'm really glad to be here. I know I'm supposed to say so anyway, but I'm glad because I think that EARTO has been advocating for creating a program and strategy on technology infrastructures for some years right now. Why? Because we believe that technology infrastructures is where innovation becomes reality. Europe is more or less spending 0.5% of the GDP on fundamental research. And this is quite comparable to the money spent by the most competitive regions in the world. But the other regions are spending much more on applied research and experimental development than we are. So we have a problem there. And technology infrastructures is one of the essential aspects to fill this gap. So this is the reason why EARTO has been emphasizing that we need to create a complete ecosystem, and I think has been mentioned already for both of my colleagues, to create a complete value chain from TRL 1 to TRL 9. And for creating this, technology infrastructures were missing in the strategy of the European Commission. So this is the reason why we're very glad to see what is the document of the Commission and how important and integrated with research infrastructure is. So what are the needs, where we should focus the effort of the European Union in the following years, now that the strategy is out? I will say 4 things. First one is political vision. And in part, this is solved because for the first time, technology infrastructures are on the strategy. But at the same time, the European Investment Bank presented yesterday a document saying that to fill this innovation gap for technology infrastructures in the European Union, we need $16 billion from now till 2030, so in 5 years. And this figure is much higher than the one that is in the budget of the European Commission. So on one side, we need to be creative to increment this budget, and at the same time, we have to look at the member states, because obviously this is also their strategy. So we need also their commitment and their political vision to complement the money that the Commission is putting on the table. Then the second one is ecosystems. For me, this is absolutely key. And we are very glad that the European Commission has recognized the role of RTOs as somebody that can define, implement, develop, and run and operating technology infrastructures. And more important than that, and connecting them with industry. We are non-for-profit organizations whose mission is to connect technology with the market, with industry. So we are the relevant ones to do these kind of things on technological infrastructures. And this recognition is in the document of the European Commission, because there are 4 examples of technology infrastructures in this document. The 4 of them are members of EARTO. It's TNO, IMEC, RISE, and BTT. So I think we are an agent that is relevant for the European Commission for the following years to help the European Commission to organize everything and to make technology infrastructure successful. Then the third one is we need to define what are the industrial needs. We can fail, we can have the money, but we can spend the money in the wrong way. So we need to know what are the industrial needs for Europe right now in this very critical moment of sovereignty. And I have good news there also, because the EARTO members only have 100,000 customers, companies in Europe that they provide services of research and development. That means that every year we have hundreds of thousands of conversations with companies in Europe to discuss about their strategy, their opportunities that they can face, how they are going to develop the products. And this is a huge information that we can gather to give to the European Commission in order that this is used to make the better selection of technology infrastructures for the following years in Europe. And then last comment from my side is that regarding how to make the investments, I think that the European Commission should focus on CapEx. I'm talking about technology infrastructures, okay? Should focus on CapEx, not on OpEx. OpEx is something that RTOs can take care of. We are there, we are designed to make the best use of technological infrastructure. It's our life. So operational expenses is not so critical for us because this is the market who had to pay for that. But CapEx is a very complex issue for organizations which are not for profit. So we don't have the capacities and the money to make the capital investments that are needed. So this is where, for me, the European Commission should focus their efforts and the member countries, because the member states also have to provide part of the solution, because technology infrastructures have to be in some way adapted to the regional and national needs. This is one of the differences with research infrastructures. So if they have to be adapted, there has to be a discussion with the member states to select the right ones for every member state or every region. So I would say that we are very glad to see the evolution of the strategy on research and technology infrastructures, and I think they are going to be a major success because they are going to, if we make our job in the right way, they are going to be a major success for the European Union industry.
Well, many thanks, and also bringing in the the technology infrastructure point of view, and also the ERTO's already knowledge and experience in that. That's true that now this is the first strategy document which already also addresses the technology infrastructures, and certainly particularly as you've seen, now we've been putting research and innovation at the center of Europe's competitiveness, so certainly we can't do without it. All of you underlined also very much the ecosystem approach, also the need to collaborate across borders. It's quite clear that, well, CERN is unique. Well, also, we can't imagine that we construct CERN, EMBL, or this kind of research infrastructures in all member states. Well, you underlined also the national needs for technology infrastructures, but I would go even further than that, and will bring in the international perspective with my international hat on. Perhaps this is something that you can now also very quickly address in the final remarks before concluding the session. Flamena.
I mean, again, I think similar to the discussion now about CERN, EMBL has a European core. It's deeply European, but in its delivery, it's truly international. The data resources that we deliver, and we were talking about number of users and so on, have 120 million web hits per day. Per day. I mean, it's an amount, it's a number that people cannot even conceive. Sometimes it's difficult to actually explain to policymakers what this means for this infrastructure. And of course, this means that we are able, as an infrastructure, to bring, in a way, the best from around the globe and anchor it in Europe. And this is very important, and it's critical both for academia, because science knows no borders, and for tech development. So I think this is a dimension that we certainly want to see enhanced in the right way going forward.
So many thanks. I'm afraid now we need to conclude the session, as our time is already in the red. So I would like to thank the panelists for sharing your insights. We've heard today how research and technology infrastructures are not only pillars of European science and technology, but also powerful enablers of innovation and entrepreneurship. This is how we can make sure that every startup, wherever it's based, can choose Europe to innovate and scale. Many, many thanks to all of you, and let's thank the panelists with great applause. Thank you very much.